Hey friends, my guest today is Chris Panayiotou. Chris P, as his athletes like to call him, is the Director of Coaching for Virginia Rush Soccer and the Grassroots Technical Director of Rush Soccer. He puts on a ton of webinars and is just full of great information when it comes to working with athletes and helping educate coaches. And we went all over the place during our discussion, and I'm really excited for him to share all of his knowledge with you. So please welcome my friend, Chris Panayiotou.
Fantastic.
So, Chris, how you doing, man? How are you adjusting to our new world?
You know what? The new normal has been interesting. But I'm well, thank you, James. The family is well.
Mm-hmm.
And we are looking at new normals every day and trying to get outside every day and just look at this as an opportunity.
Yeah. And you have kids?
Three teenage sons.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are they adjusting?
That's a great question. All three are taking it in their stride a little differently. The youngest is an avid learner, and as soon as the assignments come through on the computer, he's doing them very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
My older two are a little more relaxed learners, and they are, we'll get to it later, mañana. But they get to it. My oldest actually scrambled the other day to finish his schoolwork so he could drive and see the sunrise, which is about 30 minutes away. So he was very dedicated to doing that. And
okay.
Then
was
my
he meeting
one,
friends out there, or was it just he just wanted to?
He picked up his girlfriend, although
how early in the morning?
So he woke up at 4:30, left at 4:50, and got down to the ocean.
That's a healthy relationship right there.
Yeah.
I don't know if.
Yeah. And then
I don't think so.
My middle one decided that he was going to go fishing, right? So he went fishing and he caught his first big fish, and he was so happy because it went from his knee to his foot to the heel of his foot. So,
wow,
all driven in different ways to do different things. We've been trying to hold a PE class daily where I get my sons out, and every day at around 4:15, we go out to the high school. We get a lot of soccer balls and we just hit a few and work on what they want to work on. A little bit of soccer tennis, a little bit of target practice. There's 3 big tires there that the football team uses, and my middle boy, Anthony, set them up in the goal and tries to get the ball through and stuff like that. So,
are you working out with them?
Yeah, I go and knock a ball with them, but, I've had a bit of a routine myself, James. Quite a while back, I saw a little challenge on Facebook, and it was 100 push-ups for 100 days. So okay. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And at first it was an absolute bear.
Without stopping?
No, I had to do it in 10 sets of 10 at the beginning and stuff like that. But I got to tell you, so I'm on day 840 of 100 push-ups.
How long ago was this challenge put out?
I saw it and then I did it, but I'm on day 840 now.
Oh,
and then I added planks in as well. So I do my little planks.
What, 3 years?
No, it's just over 2 years.
Over 2 years? Yeah, math is never my strong suit.
Yeah. So,
you could just do them all the way through now.
Yeah, I can. I can. Although my kids laugh at me because they're like, well, you got to go. That's not a PE push-up, Dad. You got to get down. So, they'll tease me and stuff. But it's just a little routine, a way to keep myself healthy. Since the gyms have closed down here, I used to go in and get my hour cardio a day and then start my day, which was a change to in the past where I'd go to the office. I'd say, if I get time, I'm going to the gym, but I just flipped the script. I just said, no, push-ups, planks, go to the gym, then go into the office. Work will be there. Work will wait.
I miss the gym so much I was just talking to a friend of mine and just talking about how it's that barbell is like therapy.
Yeah.
Just being underneath all that weight and pushing it up and, doing your thing and bench press and all the, type stuff.
The typical American things.
Yeah, I love that stuff, and I've been doing some yoga from home. I got my little mat laid out here and my studio, they're going digital. It's just not the same.
It's not, but you know what? It's a replacement, isn't it? My thing is once we're done with post-pandemic, how much mental health issues will there be? And people who haven't looked after
Well,
themselves.
I mean, domestic violence has gone way up. I have police officer friends, and they're just like, this is the number one call. I mean, it was high up there before, but I can't imagine. I've got a buddy that went through a divorce during this time, and just having to kind of navigate that, it's tough. And gun sales are up, and alcohol sales are up, and Netflix watching is way up. Have you fallen into any Netflix shows?
No Netflix shows at the minute. Although my boys are into they're into All American, and there's a new show.
What is All American?
It's just I think it was a show about high schoolers and football and this and that. I've not got into it with them. Although I watched a show called Out of Banks the other day with one of them, which is just 2 hours from us, right? But it's apparently filmed in South Carolina and not North Carolina, and it's about a kid whose older brother was meant to look after him and went off. But it's an interesting little thing, and you know, some of the high school age players that we coach are talking about it in group chats and stuff like that. So I caught one of the episodes the other day with my boy. It was interesting.
Nice. So talk about what you do on a daily basis. What is your primary role with your organization?
That's a great question. So I work for Virginia Rush, and for Virginia Rush, I was the developmental director.
For those who don't know, it's soccer, right? So
it is soccer, yes,
or football.
Football,
football, yes.
So I'm based here in Virginia Beach, and Rush is it's the largest youth soccer club in the world. So we're in 33 states and 30 countries. So we have 50,000 players, you know, over the world, you know, throughout. And I'm also the Grassroots technical director for Rush Soccer. So in that role, I host webinars, which you've been a guest on a couple of times, and we can catch them.
It's been fun. Yeah. You know, I love doing your webinars for sure.
Yeah. And we try and keep them light and easy, like we're doing now. And I have the privilege and honor of speaking to some absolute brilliant people, yourself included, and they share their ideas, and, you know, we look at how can we implement them and stuff like that. We've had people like Ken Martell from US Hockey, USA.
I met him at Colorado Springs. He came and sat in, was working with US Lacrosse, Kevin Green out there. And Ken just kind of walked in and sat down. I was just like, hey, I had no idea who he was, but he's such he's the kind of guy that you don't know how major, like how big of a player he is until someone's like, hey, do you know who that is? I was like, oh, we were just hanging out.
And
he's just a really nice guy. I liked him.
Yeah. And that's the thing with, you know, being able to host these webinars, James, and talk to people like yourself who, you know, have done things, are doing things. They're so humble, the humility and the fact that they just want to share their passion. Like we had Chris Schneider on, and we're meant to go for 45 minutes. And Chris Schneider's from the USOPC.
Oh yeah, he's on the Way of Champions podcast, John O'Sullivan stuff in the couple of weeks.
John introduced me down at Rushfest, which is a little festival that we hold for the kids going into U13 soccer and 11v11, and we kind of teach them and indoctrinate them in the Rush way. You know, we go over the core values. There's classroom sessions, there's field sessions, there's parent sessions. And John was a former director of Oregon Rush Soccer. So he has a soft spot for us, and he comes and speaks to the coaches, the parents, the players. But, you know, it's just speaking to these experts who are so passionate, right, about the sport and how we can better serve the children is been huge. So that's one part.
But just let me comment on that real quick, is that I find that people who are truly experts, like you said, don't mind sharing everything.
No, absolutely.
And then there's people who are very stingent about their you're going to have to pay me for me to talk about that. And you just think, okay, well then I don't want to know. I'll go find it somewhere else and then add value to that person's life. And so I find that a lot in the sports psychology world. We have people, they're just like, they're not sharing stuff. And it's like, well, you know, in soccer, I'm sure it's the same way. It's like, you know, your drill is not that special. Tell me what it is. I'll give you one. All of our drills we took from someone else, or we modified somebody else's.
Yeah, you've not invented it yourself per se, right?
Yeah.
But we found that people have been very giving of their time, especially during this time too. We've been blessed to have some applied sports psychologists on the webinars. We've had actual clinical psychologists too, but just developed over time, the relationships have become friendships and stuff like that, which has been huge. So,
like us.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's refreshing, like you said, and, I understand people have got to make a living as well. But there's people that are making a living and making a difference. And making a difference is huge, right?
That's good, man. Making a living or making a difference.
Yeah. So, and that's what we've aimed to do, right? That's what
sometimes I wish the difference paid a little more.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference. There's a few more zeros, right?
Yeah.
With some of the people at the top end. But just, in my everyday life, right now, in my everyday role, just trying to engage with parents, players, coaches, from a social standpoint, So, it's, when the social distancing came out, I was very quick to say, well, no, it should be physical distance for social existence and enhance social connection, right?
It feels like social isolation to a lot of people. If you don't have a family, I have a dog and a cat. I just got the cat a week ago. And, it's isolating. When I'm in Target and I have to cough, I feel like if I do, I feel like someone just saw me punch a baby.
Yeah.
Like it's just a cough. Like I'm choking on some dust.
Yeah.
Everything's
allergies.
Gonna be all right.
Yeah.
But,
allergies.
Man, Oh, and allergy because of the weather change. Yeah. It's just really, it's so funny how, I was never afraid to clear my throat at the checkout line at Walmart. And now I'm like,
quiet.
Like I'm terrified.
Well, when you go out, James, are you wearing a mask? Are you
I
doing
am.
Those things?
Yeah, most of the time. I'm wearing, it's not a mask.
Okay.
I don't have any masks. I have one, but what I use is it's like a neck sleeve and then I'll pull it up.
Pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to someone, the natural reaction is to pull it down, right?
That's so funny. So I'm at dinner last night and the server or 2 nights ago, the server did that. They walked up and like, hey, how you doing? And then they pulled their mask down. I was like, what are you doing? Like either wear it or don't wear it. But they're not easy to get used to. I mean, I'm used to it now, but there was a time there where I was just like, I don't know if I could do this.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is what I think people are missing it is that in other countries, they wear masks differently for the reason we are. In America, it's very person centered. So they're like, I'm going to try to keep myself safe. But that's not the reason for the masks. The reason for the mask is if you're asymptomatic and you have been exposed, it's not to share it with other people.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a selfish thing, but that's why we're struggling so much as a country because we think that it's protecting me. I'm wearing gloves so that I'm protected. It's not about you. It's about you not spreading it to others.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know who's carrying, right?
You have no idea. And it affects people differently. Some people, it's like you never know you have it. Other people, it's a death sentence.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It is. It's scary for sure.
We're at 68,000 dead now, I think, just in America.
Yeah. And climbing. Yes. And then, the thing is, just a simple smile, right? So even you're wearing the mask and you smile, can people tell in your eyes if they're smiling? It's
Yes, that's. I just heard a story about that. She told me someone was behind her and she turned around and she just looked and smiled and then turned back around. She's like, I don't think she could tell I smiled. I think she just thought I just looked her up and down right now. It's like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's funny because, where we go to the grocery shop, my wife and I came up with a plan, right? Who's going out? We try and have a schedule. We try and adjust that schedule. And like we were talking earlier, the boys' schedules can be so different. But, the plan was, I'll go and do all the grocery shopping. And part of that was, my life insurance is higher than hers. So they'd be looked after, God forbid, if anything happened. But, some people wear them, some people don't. I've seen people that wear the mask, but it's not covering their nose. So I'm really thinking, what's the point?
Yeah. We're going to see it for a long time. It's not going to go away.
Here's my thing, right? How does sports look? Right? What about your?
The NBA is looking to come back and just like football, they're looking to play with no crowd. And LeBron was very early in this pandemic, but he said, I'm not playing if the fans aren't there.
Yeah.
Which I don't have an opinion on it at all. It's just thinking like, okay, he's probably not the only one who thinks that.
Well, here's something I saw the other day, right? Is, grassroots and youth sports should come back first, obviously, because there's no there's fans, which are the parents, but it's so much easier to phase in than the professional sports. And I think we're waiting as youth clubs to see what the professionals are doing and decide how we come back. So,
But isn't it more about keeping the people safe? You got
Absolutely.
youth sports and you have elderly people there, and they've been predominantly the most affected by this. I mean, it's affected everybody, but you get youth sports out there. Can you imagine, like, just the whole sideline? People are just, 6 feet away from each other. Like, it's gonna be interesting. And kids are practicing already in Texas. I've seen soccer practices and.
But how's that practice look, James, that you've seen? Is it the new normal? Is it less than 10? Is it are kids wearing face masks? What if a kid's sick? What if a kid sneezes?
Nothing was different. Nothing was different.
Yeah. So, we'll go out. I'll go out with my son, and if there's kids at the park, we will do the 6 feet stuff. But it's not. When I see someone that's not in my family circle, we'll tap feet as opposed to elbows or shake hands.
That's interesting. I never even thought of that. I like that. So you're more just kind of like tapping hey, what's going on? I could see that catching on. You have to have balance. You got to be kind of an athlete.
Well, you got to have balance, right? It's good core skills, right? And if you ever watch the old house party movies, the old Kid and Play, maybe it's 3 on one side, 1 on the other.
Yes.
I have a friend out in New York. Ain't gonna
hurt nobody.
Yeah.
Kid and Play.
I have a friend out in New York that says, put your hand on your heart and tap your head. You're in my heart.
Well, that's what I've been doing.
About
I just hit, take my fist and hit my chest. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Which I would do if if I'm on stage and I see someone, I'm like, hey, what's going on? But I miss that physical touch. And my routine. I teach the handshake. That's the first thing that I do when I meet with the team. And I think now since the handshake is probably going away, because if you watch future movies, they don't touch. And they're all wearing like that one-piece gray jumpsuit, which I don't want to. I like color, but they don't touch. And I'm thinking that because we live in a very attention-rich economy, that even your attention is your currency. And so I think that the next thing of how to connect with somebody is, are you making eye contact?
Yeah.
How long can you make eye contact without looking down at your phone?
Yeah.
And that's going to separate people, because we're going to become more conscious of that.
Absolutely. But I think of countries in Africa, right, where a younger child doesn't make eye contact out of respect.
It's right. Tough.
So
in Asian countries too, there's ones you make eye contact, it's disrespect.
Yeah. And when you look at, for years, the Japanese have been, greeting people with a bow, or, so is that where we go? I mean, we too at Rush, and one of the Rush Way things is a handshake. Right. I just recently had a webinar guest called Sally Needham, who works for the English Football Association, and she's big on greetings and the formal greetings. And she believes that kids should have a choice on how they greet. Is it a thumbs up, because some kids don't like the physical touch? Is it the handshake, or is it a fist bump? But she was big on choice, and she was doing her doctorate thesis on greetings and the academy system and the level. But giving kids a choice, I think, is something new. Do you want to give a high five? Do you want to give a fist bump? Do you want to give a thumbs up? Where did the handshake originate from? You know what I mean? When we look at it,
I should know that. I teach it so much. I should definitely know that. I mean, I always like when you watch Gladiator with Russell Crowe, and they grab their arms. It's like strength and honor, and they grab the forearm. I always thought that was a way better handshake, because you just grab their forearm. You're like, hey, how you doing? I think it might have something to do with you're showing with your strong hand that your sword is not in it.
Yeah.
And then you're going, I believe, like I think I heard that, or I'm making it up completely on the spot, but I think I heard that a couple years ago, where, because your sword is on your left hand. So if you're right-handed, your sword is on your left hip. So you reach across and pull it out. But you don't shake with your left hand, because you wipe your butt with it, or that's supposedly your dirty hand, And I mean, even in as near as 100 years ago, if you were left-handed, they thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
that's it.
You're of the devil. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, we've come a long way, but maybe not that far.
Well, but we've just excluded all the left-handers, right? Because it's a right-handed shake.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if somebody shakes you with the left hand, you're just like, what are you, a weirdo? Like, why do you do that?
Yeah, but then look at the implementations of the handshake, right? If it's a floppy fish, you've had the person who's given you that handshake.
Oh yeah.
Right. And you're thinking, well, what is that? And then you've got the person who try and turns it the other way for a show of power.
The dominance.
Right. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting. I won't miss the handshake. I'll miss the greeting. Maybe the kick is the
handshake tells you about people. When I was at IMG and I would work with the guys who were going to the NFL Combine or NBA Draft, like I would teach them shake hands, firm grip, eye contact, say your name, first name, pause, second name. Don't assume they know who you are.
Yeah.
And you firm grip and then you let go. And these guys would be like, oh, I don't know. And then once you do that, it communicates. Because if you meet somebody and they give you the princess or the dead fish, for me, that's communicating like I'm not interested in this conversation, or like I'm deliberately trying to tell you disrespect.
You know what though, and I think we look into that, but that can form our biases right away though too.
100%, right?
Absolutely. Which can be a dangerous game.
Well, what do we read? Because I mean, regardless of what we think, we're always communicating something.
Yeah.
Even if we're not trying.
Absolutely right. Body language. How much of communication is nonverbal.
So how do you go about teaching a kid? So my question is, I'm going to play the other side. Yeah. If we let kids make the decision, then we're letting them dictate communication styles. And so where do we draw the line of saying, we're going to teach you how to do it, as opposed to you're going to teach us what you want?
Well, it depends what kind of coach we are, right? Are we player-centered? Are we player-led? Do we say we are? Right? If we look at Chris Cushion's work, I think I heard the stat something like it takes a coach 6 weeks to figure out the team, but it could take the players 6 minutes to figure out the coach. Right?
True.
So
very true.
If we are coach led, or if we are player centered, what would be wrong with giving the players decisions? I think it's okay to set expectations together, but then if I'm giving you a choice of a thumbs up or a kick, I've given you the choice on how to, and I'm talking about younger players as well, how we can get into their world. I don't think we always have to have them conform to ours. We have to sometimes, and most of the time, be in their world to get the best out of them, Mm-hmm. And then, here's the other thing, you talked about the handshake and the pause. What are you teaching on the other side of that? Are you teaching, say the person's name, James, say it a couple of times. So now we've built that connection and, and stuff like that. So it's all,
when you teach a kid something like that, it's so funny. Like when you give them those kind of scripts and then they repeat it verbatim and you're just like, oh, we need to work on your authenticity, but you're trying. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. I work with younger players, anywhere from 5 years old to 10. And I'll always ask, how are you? How was your day? And it's 1 in 20 that might say, you know what? I am great. How was your day? Tell me about you. And, I don't know with all the players, but sometimes I'll ask them, hey, what's new in your world?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the way I've kind of done that in the past is if I get, like you're speaking my language as far as the age. I love 10-year-olds. 9 and 10-year-old athletes are just so much fun. And what I would always tell them is if you're going to be late to practice or miss practice, I want you to call me and I want your parents to be right there. And I would just tell them flat out, like, we're going to practice how you talk to your coach, because I'm planting a seed and that tree is going to grow and I'm not going to be able to enjoy its shade, but I will be able to say I planted that seed, And so I would tell a kid, and I love these conversations where, little Cindy would call me up and it'd be practice at 3:30. She's calling me at 2:00 because she's still at the doctor's appointment. She's going to be late. And so, this was really funny. She was just really nervous. And I was just like, hey, all right, remember what we practiced? All right, I want you to hang up, call me back, and then ask for me. Hi, is Coach Leith there? And then so we have this whole thing and it's a train wreck, but eventually the kid realizes, oh, coach is helping me. Like he's not coming down on me. We're having a conversation about having a conversation. And because we are working with not many adults, but children.
Yeah.
They're not
Absolutely.
many adults. And so if we can help them to understand our world by giving them certain scripts and giving them practice, it makes it so much more fun. But then the influence that you have over that kid to be able to make the right decision and to work hard at practice, it really stems from those little moments right there.
Yeah, but it's building that connection and relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just they know that they have another adult that's on their side.
Yeah, in their corner. That's such a big deal. Yeah, I like that you said that.
I think as coaches, though, we also have to make sure we have on their lens, right? Looking at life through their lenses as opposed to the adult lens that we.
Did you ever watch Mr. Rogers?
I've heard of it, not as much.
Yeah.
We didn't get it as much as England.
So Mr. Rogers was just this guy. Every morning he would go on TV and he would talk to one kid through the lens.
Yeah.
And I read his book. I'm a huge fan. He's one of my heroes. Him and Dwayne Johnson. Those are like my heroes. The Rock, right?
Yeah, The Rock, yeah.
And so what you said about seeing the world through the lens of a child, that was Mr. Rogers' superpower. And it was encapsulated in this one moment where Mr. Rogers was getting his eyes checked. And there's a grown man with a flashlight looking into Mr. Rogers' eye. And you see it from the profile. And Mr. Rogers is standing here, the doctor's here, and the flashlight's going in. And Mr. Rogers goes, "Can you see my thoughts?" And I'm watching it as an adult. I saw this episode a couple of years ago because I still play him in the background sometimes. And I thought, that's brilliant. He, as a grown man, knows that the doctor can't see his thoughts, but he also knows that the kid watching is wondering, can he see my thoughts?
Yeah.
And the value of that lesson and the understanding that as a coach, you're going to have more power if you can remember what it's like to be childlike and not childish.
Yep.
Right? That you can remember that the world that they're looking at is kids love the same book over and over. You remember when you were reading books to your kids when they were younger and they're like, I want Over the Moon one more time. Like, I want this. The reason is because since yesterday, when you read it, they've learned so much. And now they can hear you read that book and then they can go, oh, I know how to apply that better now. I know how to think about that better because I learned 100 things today. As adults, we learn like 4 or 5, maybe, if we're intentional and we're not watching Netflix the whole time. But yeah, I love that you said that, like looking at life through the eyes of a child. That's the secret to being a really great coach, youth coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I think as coaches, we want to impart our knowledge, but we can learn so much from them if we listen not to answer, but listen to understand, kind of
listen
thing.
To guide.
Listen to guide.
Yeah.
So I have a group of 9 and 10-year-old boys that I'm working with, and every week, every Tuesday, we have a Zoom meeting. And a couple of weeks ago, one of the boys actually led the Zoom, and he says, "You know what? We're going to start with this. How is everybody doing? What are you finding tough?"
Brilliant.
What, and I based a lot of it off, the webinar that you did on how to host Zooms, right? But I'm dealing with 9 and 10-year-olds, right? So we've got another one hosting it tomorrow. And what they've done is we asked them to put together in pictures or words, a couple of slides. Why do you love soccer? What's important to you, right, in life? So, one of the boys moved over from England and he's a Hull City fan and he's going to be presenting tomorrow. And one of the other boys is steering the meeting, usually there's a couple of other coaches on with me just for the safe sport kind of thing. But it's interesting to hear them say sometimes there's that awkward silence, but I'm okay with it. I'm good, and then you'll see, the backgrounds and the kids like pulling faces, but I can't imagine going through that as a 9 and 10-year-old child, just this, what we're going through and can't comprehend as adults. I wonder, and some of them will share, hey, this is.
What do they say? What are they saying?
Well, some of the stuff is, I find it tough not seeing my friends. I find it tough not being at practice, just going to school and having recess. When we think about it, just think, if you were like me when I was young, we'd play tag at recess. What does tag look like now? Is it with a pool noodle? A simple game of tag, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Until of course they come up with the antidote to fight this,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I was on the phone with some schools in Hawaii, and there's some talk about no football, no American football this year for the island. And they were like, what are we going to do? The athletics programs are going to falter. And I had to remind them, I said, look, I know your job is athletics, but these kids play sports because of relationships.
Yeah.
They're not missing championship games. They're not missing, I've got to, get ready for that. They're missing hanging out in the locker room. They're missing pregame. They're missing halftime. Like, how do we adjust? Yeah. They want competition. I said, so if you have a football team, if you have 55 young males who can't play football, you still have a bunch of males a bunch of athletes that want to play and want to be competitive. And so why don't you play ultimate frisbee? Or what if you went internal because you can't play other schools and you went intramural? I said, because most kids don't want to be a lineman. Maybe they want to play flag football and catch the touchdown and throw the pass, or maybe you bring in some soccer players and you have a tournament, a frisbee tournament, do something. They want the competition. They want the camaraderie. Yeah. It's not about winning games and trophies. That's for us. That's for the adults.
Yeah, it is.
Kids don't give a crap about that stuff.
Yeah. I think, they miss training. They miss things. They miss seeing their friends.
It's the relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. Definitely the relationships. Right. And, most people, I host our volunteer coaches meetings, and I go around the country to other rush clubs, and we hold meetings, and I'll ask, I'll take from Joe Erdman's book, right? Why do you coach? Why do you coach?
Inside Out Coaching.
Coach? Yeah. And I'll say things like, okay, what do you coach? How long have you coached? And then I'll ask them something. When's your birthday? Tell us something we can't tell by seeing you, by looking at you. So to try and get to know the person. And then people say to me, well, what do you coach? And I say, I coach children and I use soccer as the vehicle, So that's the first thing we have to remember. We are coaching people, not sports. And we have to remember that they're human beings, not human doings, right? Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
I had a bit of an evolution as a coach about 10 years ago. I was coaching an under 11 game, and there was a kid sitting on the bench, and I'm giving direction to the team that's playing. And my face was kind of contorted. You could construe it as rage. And the kid on the bench is looking at me like that going, and the parents send me the picture. And the boy's just coming back from his ACL injuries in college now. And I just recently saw him at Christmas when we went to Wisconsin. And I thanked him for changing and evolving my coaching.
Yeah.
Because I asked myself, is that the coach I want to be? So just that simple picture, seeing that picture, just flip the script for me, right? And as many coaches, like I said, we're so quick to fix as opposed to point out what's going well. So I'm possibly the loudest when something's gone great, because we want to catch them in. We want to catch them being good. Yes. We don't want to have to correct everything, So about 4 years ago, we started a school program here in Virginia, and it was just trying to get ingrained into the community. So there's 55 elementary schools. So we would visit the elementary schools and take over the PE classes. And we would teach from kindergarten through 5th grade. And we would teach the PE class and introduce them to soccer. And we started to use positive discipline. So instead of saying, don't sit on the ball, we would thank and praise the behaviors that we wanted. And invariably, what do kids want to do? They want to please. Kids would stand up and they want to conform and please. And then say, hey, coach, you see me? Can you see me? Can you see that I've done what you've asked? So that's what we've tried to bring into our coaching, as well as games-based approach to create problem solvers. Some people think that I'm completely nuts because my pendulum swung so far away from isolated training. But my goal is to have as many kids playing for as long as possible in the best possible environment,
Yeah, and I think I would just add to catch them being good is I think some coaches interpretate that as in ignoring the negative behavior. But if you have a kid sitting on the ball, you just can say something like, hey, get off the ball. We don't sit on it because, you'll make it lopsided. And you don't make a big deal out of it. They're not in trouble. Yeah. It's just like, this is what you do. This is what you don't do. But then when they do something good, you celebrate it. Like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That was great. That was really good. Instead of ignoring negative behavior, just being very calm about it and be like, oh no, we don't do that.
Yeah. So about that same time where I saw that picture, I tried to eliminate the word don't out of my coaching vocabulary. And simply because, and you'll know this as a coach or as a former player, coach brings you in, pulls you in by the face mask and says, hey, Leith, don't drop that ball. Don't miss the layup. What's the first thing we do after that?
I'm not trying to, coach.
No, I know. But the first thing we do is we miss that layup or we drop the ball because the emphasis has been on the don't. So
too much pressure.
Yeah. So with the kids that I was coaching, I said to them, if you hear me say don't, catch me out and say, coach, don't say don't. So now instead of saying don't sit on the ball, I've praised the behaviors we've wanted. Hey, thank you for standing up and having your foot on the ball. And that kid invariably stands up. It's not that I've ignored the behavior. We've just reframed the standards and behaviors that we want and looked at it as a positive as opposed to a negative.
Yeah, I heard one coach say something very similar, and she said that whenever she says don't, the players are instructed to say do. Pick another word, coach.
Brilliant.
I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. And so they're waiting for her to say don't.
Yeah,
and she'll say it and do pick another word, coach. Like, ooh, that's good.
That also leads into something else now, James, because now they're focused, they're present, they're engaged.
Right. They're being aware of what they're saying.
Being aware of what this, and, what are they noticing?
Yep.
They're noticing. And, most coaches, what do? We look at the ball. We hardly look away from the ball. So now if we're doing these things, we're increasing scanning abilities, which are so important in every sport, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about, quarterbacks just looking like fighter pilots. When they scan, they look further afield and then they come in closer. Right. In sports, sometimes we look at close and then quarterbacks look touchline to touchline first and then look at the smaller picture.
Oh yeah. So, you go wide to small.
Yeah. And just zoom in, zoom out, I suppose, right? How can we teach that to kids? How do we, encourage them to do that? I don't think we can do that by isolated, drills. We can do it by small-sided games and activities that, or situations that they're likely to repeat themselves in a game, stuff like that. So,
well, we're coming down to, we've passed 30 minutes because I think you and I have talked forever, but, what is something that you don't want to go back to normal?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I love the fact that families are together. Most families, I should say, those that haven't been isolated, and people aren't being governed by, I've got to go to this practice, that practice, this thing, that thing. I'd like that to be a phased thing too. However, I would not want us to forget that, family time has been so valuable and important.
Yeah. Have you guys been intentional, like having dinner with them? And
yeah. Every time everybody's home at the same time, we do make it a point to try and have dinner. Mm-hmm. My oldest is still working. He's deemed as essential worker. He's working at McDonald's. So, he'll come in.
Have your Big Macs.
Yeah.
Gotta get those nuggets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, that's good, man. And
what about you? Let me ask you that question.
Yeah. So, I love that I've seen how I can go digital in my Unleash the Athlete world, because the travel is a grind. Yeah. And, flying out to Virginia, or last May, I was in Switzerland for almost a whole month. And, it was amazing. I was able to speak with some incredible people out there, but I came home and I was sick. It was too much, a lot of travel, a lot of just being exhausted. And, so I'm looking at ways to stay connected and to stay valuable in the sports world without having to be there so often.
And I think this period has proven that, right?
Absolutely. Well, a lot of people are going live. You go on your Instagram and there's 5-6 people are live and they're doing that. And we're such a content hungry society anyways. I think that once things kind of go back to quote unquote normal, there's going to be a lot of room for things like this, which is why I've started these conversations. I mean, I have 12 set up just for this week because people are like, yeah, and then I'll slowly release them on my podcast. But just stay connected without an agenda. Like I had 0 notes for our conversation.
Yeah.
No, and the person before you, Jenny, she's my yoga instructor. We just chatted. Yeah. We just talked. It was fantastic. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to keeping things manageably slower than they were before.
We there's a webinar series called America Scores, and they had over 100 speakers. And to be honest, some of that can be so overwhelming, right? Mm-hmm. Can be so
That's
overwhelming.
A lot of speakers.
What do I? And it was over a 14-day period, and they did a wonderful job. But knowing what's out there and feeling the need to get on and still keep up with your podcasts, and it's like, okay, start setting limits. Maybe 4 hours at the computer. You know, my wife said, you know what? I liked it better when you were coaching because I knew when you walked through the door, you were done. When you sit at the dining room table and they're at the computer, I do not know when you're done, and I don't know, so just communicate in different ways and just making sure that for our own well-being, we are getting up and moving,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I won't. So after this, because I've been on the computer all morning, I've blocked out my schedule. So once we're done and it renders, I'm going to close my computer and I won't be back on till 5-6 for 4 hours. Yeah. I'm going to go out. I'm going to walk. I'm going to read. I'm reading Malcolm Gladwell's Talking with Strangers right now, which is phenomenal. It's such a great book. But I'm being very intentional about screen time. Yeah. It's too much. It's too much screen time. Yesterday, my coach mentorship, 0 people showed up. It's a Sunday afternoon. People are zoomed out. It's too much screen time. And so I was happy to see they didn't come. Yeah. I still presented, but
did you record?
I did record. I still did my thing and posted it and stuff. But, there was a part of me who was happy. It's like, good. Yeah. They're not here. That means they're somewhere else. Hopefully they're with their family or they're with their dog or they're just, hanging out with themselves.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. That was nice.
Yeah. Brilliant.
That's all I got for you, man. Thanks for hanging out with me, bro. And I've always enjoyed our conversations.
Yeah, we need more.
Yes, sir. All right. Let me know if I can come on. I've always got some new ideas to share.
I will. I got told off for having 6 guests last month and 5 this month. So they've asked me to slow down.
Well, they're live, right? Or are they live?
Okay. They are live. We do record them and then share them at later dates as well.
Yeah. So. Right. So people need to just relax.
Yeah.
It's free too. So hush.
It is, right? And it's a way for me. Like I'm looking at your room behind you and I'm like, oh, that's great. I wonder what books are on the shelf, but it's just a different way of connecting, isn't it?
Yeah. You can tell a lot about somebody by what they let you see in their Zoom.
Yeah.
You're looking in the back like, what is that? Like, clean your room, dude.
Yeah. This has been my spot for the last 7 weeks. My wife's got a better spot in the office. But I've tried to steal her spot, but she's like,
Yeah, you're doing all right. You're okay in the background. All right, brother. Be safe. And I thank you for coming on.
You too. And thank you for all you do. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Take care, buddy.
See you. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Chris P is a great guy. We had a couple conversations since I recorded this podcast, and every time I talk to him, I'm always walking away with some kind of gold nugget, and he just loves what he does. And kids are really struggling right now because of not being able to connect with their peers and coaches, or they don't know what to do. And Chris continues to provide resources for coaches and for athletes and for parents, and I just really appreciate him. Thank you, Chris, for being on the show. If you want to join the UTA text message community, text message the word podcast to 972-236-5924 and we'll get you on that list. Remember, there's an athlete in all of us. Unleash the athlete today.